In the peaceful village of Tombi, nestled between vast forests and shimmering rivers, life followed the rhythm of the seasons and ancestral traditions. It was a place where children's laughter echoed beneath the shade of baobab trees, where elders gathered under the council tree to recount legends of the past. But behind this apparent harmony, some destinies were marked by suffering. Nayala's was one of them. Nayala was born on a night when the wind blew fiercely, as if announcing a trial to come. Her mother, Kedia, a gentle woman loved by all, did not survive childbirth. Her father, Omaru, devastated by grief, raised his daughter alone for 4 years before deciding to remarry. He then married Fadima, a woman whose beauty concealed a heart of stone. At first, Fadima presented a kind face, feigning benevolence. But when her own daughter, Salima, was born, her heart permanently closed to Nayala. She relegated the little girl to the status of a servant, assigning her all the chores, fetching water, sweeping the courtyard, preparing meals, and washing clothes. While Salima grew up in luxury, dressed in the finest fabrics and fed the best meals, Nayala slept on a warm mat in a corner of the kitchen. Years passed, and Nayala became a brave and resilient young girl. Despite the privations and humiliations, she never lost her gentleness or hope. Every evening, under the pale light of the moon, she would sit by the river and whisper a prayer to the ancestors. One day, I will have a better future. But reality always caught up with her. Her father, weakened by worries and tensions within his household, fell ill. Rather than easing his suffering, Fadima intensified her cruelty toward Nayala. When Omaru took his last breath, Nayala found herself alone in a cruel world, with no one to protect her. However, an unexpected event shook the village. A royal messenger arrived with great news. Prince Malik, heir to the throne, was returning after years spent abroad and was to choose a wife from among the village's young women. The king's council selected 6 young women, among them Salima and Nayala. Horrified, Fadima knew that as long as Nayala was in the competition, a grand destiny might await her. She swore to prevent it by any means necessary. But could she fight against fate? The sun had barely risen over the village of Tombi when the royal drums echoed through the morning air. The villagers, surprised, stepped out of their homes to see a rider dressed in royal blue fabric, a sign that he came from King Sedu's palace. He stopped at the center of the village, where the elders held their gatherings, and declared in a strong voice, "People of Tombi, Prince Malik, heir to the throne, has returned after long years abroad. According to tradition, he will choose a wife from among the young women of our village." A stunned silence fell over the assembly. Then excited murmurs arose. It was an honor for Tombi. Every family with a daughter of marrying age began hoping that their child would be chosen. The messenger continued. 6 young women will be selected to stay at the palace for 2 months, where they will be observed and tested. At the end of this period, the prince will choose his future queen. The village elders gathered to deliberate. They chose the 6 girls based on their beauty, grace, and reputation within the community. Salima was naturally selected, thanks to her mother Fadima's influence. But it was a great surprise when Nayala's name was also announced. Fadima clenched her fist, her face tightening with rage. She could not allow this orphan to have a chance to outshine her own daughter. As soon as they returned home, she made it clear to Nayala that this journey to the palace would not be an opportunity but a trial. "Do you think you can compete with Salima?" she hissed, casting a scornful look at the young girl. "You will go there, but I promise you will be the most miserable of all the candidates." And she kept her word. She forced Nayala to work twice as hard as usual, deprived her of proper meals, and forbade her from bathing every day, ensuring that she would look tired and neglected upon arriving at the palace. Meanwhile, she showered Salima with the best care, providing her with precious oils to make her skin glow and sumptuous dresses to impress the prince. But fate always watches over those who endure with courage. One night, as Nayala wept silently by the fire, an old village woman, Mama Kadi, approached her. "Never let someone else's darkness extinguish your light, my child. Take this." She handed her a small vial of fragrant oil and a simple yet elegant dress. "Destiny is already written, Nayala. What belongs to you, no one can take from you." On the morning of their departure, Fatima was certain she had arranged everything to humiliate Nayala. But when she saw the young girl, calm and dignified despite everything, she felt a shiver of unease. The road to the palace had begun, and with it, Nayala's destiny was set in motion. The journey to the royal palace of Sahiba lasted several hours. The caravan moved through golden plains, lush green hills, and dense forest where the songs of birds blended with the rhythmic sound of hoofs on the packed earth. Nayala, seated at the back of the cart, silently watched the landscape pass by, her heart torn between fear and hope. Beside her, Salima and the other candidates chatted excitedly, exchanging speculations about life at the palace and Prince Malik, whom none of them had yet met. Salima, in particular, exuded absolute confidence. "I am certain the prince will choose me. After all, who could possibly compete with me?" she declared, casting a disdainful glance at Nayala. Nayala did not respond. She knew that no words could convince Salima of her arrogance. Instead, she simply clutched the small vial of oil that Mama Kadi had given her, a reminder that her destiny did not depend on her stepsister's mockery. When the caravan finally reached the massive gates of the palace, a respectful silence settled among the young women. Before them stood a city of stone and gold, a palace with sculpted rooftops and towering columns. The guards, clad in shimmering armor, swung open the gates, revealing a vast inner courtyard where a crowd of servants and advisors awaited their arrival. A towering man stepped forward. It was Ibrahim, the captain of the guards, whose upright posture and piercing gaze commanded respect. "Welcome to the palace of Sahiba. You are here to prove your worth. For 2 months, you will live under the watchful eyes of the king and the prince. You will be judged on your grace, intelligence, and strength of character. Only one of you will be chosen." A murmur ran through the group. The candidates were not here solely for their beauty but for much more. The young women were led to their chambers, located in a wing of the palace reserved specifically for the contenders. They were assigned 2 per room, and Nayala was placed with Zina, a gentle and observant young woman. "I'm happy to share this room with you," Zina said with a warm smile. "I noticed the way Salima speaks to you. She doesn't like you very much, does she?" Nayala lowered her gaze. "She is my stepsister, but she treats me like a stranger." Zina nodded. "Here, we are all on equal footing. It is not rank or wealth that will make us a queen, but our hearts." These words resonated with Nayala. Perhaps, for the first time, she had found a friend. The next morning, the contenders were summoned for their first trial, managing the royal household. They had to prepare a traditional meal for the court, oversee the maintenance of the gardens, and organize a reception space for the king's guests. Nayala, accustomed to domestic tasks, worked skillfully and discreetly. She knew how to select the best ingredients for cooking, harmonize the colors of the fabrics in the reception hall, and offer advice to the gardeners on medicinal plants. Meanwhile, Salima, who had never lifted a finger at home, was clumsy and impatient. She spilled a bowl of spices, cut herself while handling a knife, and ended up giving orders to the servants instead of working herself. By evening, King Sedu and Prince Malik inspected the results. "One of you has particularly distinguished herself today," the king announced. The young women held their breath. "Nayala, your organization and effort were remarkable." A heavy silence fell. Selima clenched her fist. How could this girl she so despised surpass everyone on the very first day? Nayala, however, humbly bowed her head. She knew this was only the beginning of the trials. The hardest part was yet to come. Days passed at the palace, and with them, the challenges continued, testing not only the young women's skills but also their inner strength. It became clear that King Sedu and Prince Malik were looking for more than just a beautiful queen. They sought a woman of substance, someone who could represent the kingdom of Sahiba with dignity. The first character test was an unusual one. The contenders were invited to participate in a simulated royal council meeting, where they had to solve a complex issue. The king presented them with a scenario. A severe drought was afflicting the kingdom, endangering crops and water reserves. Each girl had to propose a solution before the council. Confident as ever, Selima suggested increasing taxes on the peasants to fund the purchase of water from other villages, an idea that made the elders murmur in concern. Zina proposed digging new wells, but she was unable to provide a detailed plan. When it was Nayala's turn, she hesitated for a moment, aware that all eyes were on her. Then, she spoke calmly. "The peasants are already struggling under this drought. If we tax them further, we will lose their support and loyalty. I propose establishing a trade agreement with neighboring villages that have surplus water. In return, we can provide them with our best seeds once the rainy season returns." The king nodded, impressed. A solution based on cooperation and foresight. These are the qualities we seek in a queen. Selima shot Nayala a furious glare, frustrated at being outshined once again. Another trial was designed to test their humility. The young women were sent to the royal orphanage to spend a day with the children. Some contenders, like Selima, found the exercise tedious and remained distant. Selima spent the day complaining about the heat and dust, refusing even to sit on the worn-out rugs. Nayala, on the other hand, fully embraced the experience. She listened to the children's stories, played with them, and even shared pieces of bread she had saved from her lunch. A young boy, tears in his eyes, asked her, "Why are you kind to us? The others ignore us." Nayala smiled gently. "Because I was once like you. Abandoned, alone, with no one to comfort me. I know what that feels like, and I don't want you to experience the same pain." The orphanage caretakers reported these words to the king, who silently added another point in Nayala's favor. Meanwhile, Selima and her mother, Fadima, were not idle. Determined to see her daughter become queen, Fadima secretly introduced a mystical charm into the palace, hoping to enchant Prince Malik. One morning, Selima applied the charm to herself and went to greet the prince. At first, Malik seemed captivated, but his demeanor quickly returned to normal, as if the charm had no effect. The observant prince grew suspicious of Selima from that moment on. Moreover, Selima tried to isolate Nayala by spreading rumors about her past. But Nayala, accustomed to adversity, did not respond to the provocations. She remained focused on her tasks, continuing to help the palace servants and proving her worth through her actions. One night, a final trial was secretly organized, a test of mental and physical endurance. The young women were awakened before dawn and led to the palace gardens, where they had to complete a series of grueling tasks, carrying heavy baskets, harvesting fruit, and repairing a collapsed stone wall. Selima quickly gave up, complaining that such tasks were beneath her status. Other girls, like Zina, struggled to keep up but eventually faltered. Despite her exhaustion, Nayala pressed on with determination. Used to physical labor at home, she completed every task without complaint. The palace servants, impressed, discreetly encouraged her. When the sun rose, Nayala was the only one still standing, her hands covered in dust but her gaze unwavering and proud. Prince Malik, who had secretly observed all the trials, shared his thoughts with the king. Nayala is different. She does not seek attention, yet her inner strength shines brighter than all the others. She has the soul of a queen. The king nodded but remained silent. He knew that the moment of truth was approaching. Meanwhile, Nayala, exhausted but content, told herself that she had done everything she could. Her fate was now in the hands of the ancestors. Days passed at the palace, and Nayala felt an increasing weight on her shoulders. She had never wanted this competition. All she truly desired was a place where she could live in peace, far from the mistreatment of Faduma and Solima. But within the palace, the rivalry grew fiercer each day. The other contenders engaged in a silent war, willing to do anything to win. Solima, in particular, became increasingly cruel. One morning, after a night of quarrels among some of the girls, Nayala secretly went to see King Sedu. She knelt humbly before him and said, "Your Majesty, I beg you to allow me to leave this competition." The king, surprised, furrowed his brows. "Why such a request?" Nayala lowered her gaze. "I am not meant to be queen. I am just an orphan who has never known luxury or importance. I am not like the other girls. All I want is a simple and peaceful life. Please, allow me to stay here as a servant. I would rather serve the palace than compete with those who have always had everything I never did." The king observed her for a long moment, his piercing gaze searching for the meaning behind her words. "You are different, Nayala. That is precisely what makes you strong. But I cannot give you an answer yet." He gestured toward the door. "Return to your chamber. We will speak of this later." Nayala did not insist and left the room, her heart heavy. She hoped the king would understand her wish and finally let her be at peace. As she walked through the corridors, Nayala crossed paths with Ibrahim, the captain of the guards. He immediately noticed her troubled expression and stopped. "Nayala, why do you look so downcast?" She hesitated, then finally confided in him about her request to the king. Ibrahim looked at her, stunned. "You really want to give up? After everything you've endured?" "I never wanted to fight for this title. I just want a normal life." Ibrahim slowly nodded, deep in thought. "Nayala, let me tell you something. Greatness is not measured by wealth or power but by the strength of one's heart. I do not yet know what the prince's choice will be, but if I were in his place, there would be no doubt about who deserves this throne." Nayala smiled faintly, touched by his words, but it did not change her decision. "Thank you, Ibrahim. But I just hope the king will grant my request." Ibrahim sighed, seeing that she was determined. "I will speak to the king on your behalf, but I doubt he will accept." That evening, a secret meeting was held between King Sedu and Prince Malik. The king shared Nayala's request with his son. The prince remained silent for a moment before responding. "She seeks neither wealth nor glory, and that is precisely what makes her precious." King Sedu nodded. "Then we must wait. We will see if she persists in her decision." But Nayala did not know that her destiny was already being written. And that soon, she would no longer be able to escape what awaited her. The long-awaited day arrived. The palace was in a frenzy, drums resounded throughout the kingdom of Sahiba. The people had gathered in the grand square, eager to discover who would be chosen as the future queen. The three final contenders, Nayala, Salima, and Zina were brought before the royal throne. They were dressed in magnificent garments, but Nayala, true to herself, wore a simple dress gifted to her by Momakodi. She had no desire to impress, for in her heart, she still hoped to be freed from this competition. Salima, confident, stood tall with an arrogant smile. She was certain that, thanks to her mother's charm, Prince Malik was under her spell. She expected him to say her name at any moment. King Sedu rose and addressed the crowd. People of Sahiba, after 2 months of trials, the time has come to announce who will become the future queen of our kingdom. An absolute silence fell. Prince Malik stepped forward slowly and fixed his gaze on the young women. Then, in a clear voice, he declared, "The woman who deserves this title. The one who has proven her worth through humility, strength, and wisdom." Salima was already smiling, ready to hear her name. But the prince took a step toward Nayala. "It is Nayala." A murmur of astonishment swept through the crowd. Salima's smile vanished instantly. "This is impossible," she cried. "I am the one you love. You chose me from the very first day." The prince gave her a cold smile. "No, Salima. It was not me you enchanted. It was a trick." At these words, King Sedu raised his hand and signaled to the guards. Behind them, a door opened, revealing Ibrahim, the captain of the guards. "People of Sahiba, I have deceived you." The crowd held its breath. "From the beginning, I have lived among you under the identity of the captain of the guards. But in truth, I am the real Prince Malik." Shouts of astonishment erupted throughout the royal court. The prince had disguised himself to observe the contenders in secret. Salima fell to her knees, unable to believe what she was hearing. She had fought to charm a man who was not even the real prince. "I have observed each of you," the prince continued. "And it was not wealth or appearance that impressed me, but the sincerity and kindness of Nayala." The people erupted into applause. Nayala, however, was in shock. "But I do not want to be queen," she murmured. Prince Malik stepped closer and gently wiped away the tears that had formed on her cheeks. "Sometimes, those who do not seek greatness are the most worthy of receiving it." King Sedu signaled to the servants, and a royal gown embroidered with gold was brought forth. Malik took the crown and gently placed it on Nayala's head. Humiliated, Salima burst into tears, while her mother, Fatima, attempted to slip away unnoticed. But justice had been served. The village, filled with joy, celebrated their new queen. Thus, the orphan whom everyone had once scorned became the sovereign of the kingdom. Night fell over the kingdom of Sahiba, yet the festivities continued under the glow of torches and the rhythmic beat of the drums. Nayala, the once despised orphan, was now crowned queen. However, as she stood beside Prince Malik, a wave of emotions swept through her heart. She had never sought royalty or glory. All she had ever wanted was a simple life, far from the suffering of her past. But sometimes, destiny leads us down a path we do not understand at first. The fall of Fatima and Salima. Unable to face their humiliation, Fatima and Salima attempted to flee the palace before the king could deliver his judgment. But the guards stopped them at the gates. King Sedu, merciful yet just, addressed them. "Greed and cruelty have led to your downfall. Instead of raising Nayala as a sister and daughter, you sought to crush her. But know this, destiny is not so easily broken." He did not have them imprisoned, but he banished them from the palace and stripped them of all their privileges. A few months later, Salima gave birth to a child from her relationship with the false prince. But the man she had believed to be her destined love vanished without a trace. She became a single mother, rejected and forced to live in the poverty she had once scorned. Meanwhile, Nayala adapted to her new life, but she did not become a vain or arrogant queen. Instead of ruling with pride and excess, she opened the palace doors to orphans, widows, and the less fortunate. She established fairer laws to protect the vulnerable and made the education of young girls a priority. The people loved her deeply, not because she wore a crown, but because her heart had remained unchanged. One evening, as she walked through the palace gardens, she recalled Mama Cody's words. "Destiny is already written. What belongs to you, no one can take from you." And in that moment, she understood her birth did not define her. Her choices, her resilience, and her kindness did. For true nobility does not come from blood, but from the heart. And so, the rejected orphan became a beloved queen, proving that those who endure hardships with patience and courage are often the ones whom destiny has chosen for the greatest of fates.